Here we are back at the
ready?
Academy Sports and Outdoors Rigs and Techniques, and we're going to talk a little bit about grouper fishing. You're a champion.
I guess. Yeah,
And
some people say I'm pretty good at it.
You're pretty good at it. You do it all day. We're going to talk first a little bit about jigs, because that's what a lot of people are doing.
I mean, there's a lot of different ways to catch them, but the jig is one of, it's getting really popular. And what's getting really popular is these little, what they call slow pitch or butterfly jigs.
We called them speed jigs.
Back in the day.
Back in the day, that's what we called them.
Yep.
Or vertical jigs. And I noticed that there's some short ones, and then we got some long ones here. And I know this,
So I'm kind of more like into the shorter ones, just because it more resembles what we're using, what's naturally down there. In other words, squid, shrimp, maybe little snappers, grunts, and this and that. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of matching the hatch when you use these smaller jigs. At least that's my preference.
Is there any color preferences that you like?
I like something bright. I know a lot of people say it disappears when it gets down there, but I'm still kind of all about a little bit of color.
Well, shiny things still say
silver.
shiny, but reds go away,
right.
and pinks and stuff like that. They turn gray after 30 feet or 40 feet.
Certain times of the year there'll be certain types of bait around, right? Mm-hmm. Like through the winter time, it might be squid, it might be crabs that they're looking for. But then when you get into the spring, when you start getting these migrations or movements of sardines, cigar minnows, then maybe you want to start using some more blues and silvers, something that resembles that.
Is there a certain way you like to fish the jig?
Close to the bottom. And one thing you always got to remember when you're fishing these jigs, whether it's a butterfly jig or in this case a grouper bucktail, the bite 9 times out of 10 occurs on the drop. So you always want to maintain contact with the jig as you're dropping it. You'll see guys, they'll flip that thing up and then drop the rod tip real quick. If they get the bite, they're never going to feel it. You always got to maintain contact with the jig as it's going down.
Just hold it the line between your fingers?
Or just the rod tip. A lot of these rods are very sensitive to the bite nowadays. It's not like the old days where we had that great big fiberglass rod where you could swat it against the telephone pole.
I was going to ask you, when I was growing up, everybody wanted to have that 11-foot fiberglass with a Newell conventional on there to reel real fast to get them out of the hole.
Carried it down the dock.
Correct, but you say that this is the kind of thing you like to use, a 6500C pin.
Right. You know what changed grouper fishing? Braided line.
You can feel it. You can feel everything. Yeah. It's very small.
Absolutely.
It makes the jig sink faster.
More power out of it. So when we first started grouper fishing offshore in 160, 170 feet of water with 60-pound mono, we probably lost over half our fish because of the stretch.
10 to 20%.
Yes. By the time you feel the bite, right, he's already in the rocks. And that's why guys would use that great big, long, heavy rod to try to give you some leverage to get out of there. Yep.
I got you. So you like the 8-ounce jig there?
Well, there's, these jigs are fishing at what they call like a slow pitch, right? And I talked about that. I guess fast pitch would be jigging it quickly to the surface.
Right.
Slow pitch is just kind of maintaining contact with the bottom, staying within 3-4 feet of the bottom. And you'll see those guys when they fish it. It's just a quick little tap. That's all there is to it.
Back in the day when the speed jigging started, after about the 3rd or 4th drop, I was slow pitching.
That's right.
Because I could get it up about halfway.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to drop that back down there. And then try to work. And it would work. It would still work because your bait's down there in the zone. You're maybe not catching amberjacks and stuff that'll follow it up.
Yep.
But you're still down in there.
And that's another thing to remember. You might be catching some amberjacks while you're trying to get the groupers, but the groupers are there. You got to stick with it. This jig is just an old standby. It's just nothing more than a bucktail.
That's the one I think you brought the last time.
Yeah, man. No, these things have caught so many fish over the years. And it's really simple to dress up. You put a little curly tail on it, something chartreuse like that.
Yeah, these are the Fish Bites Fight Clubs.
Yeah, and I mean
add some scent to there.
That's just a no-brainer. That's a great way to find a few fish.
Well, if you're not going to be using the jigs, what's your go-to baits when you're going down the line as far as
I always say if all else fails, fire down a whole squid.
A whole squid.
Cannot miss with a whole squid. And then you can use pieces of squid. Say you're not getting the bite on the jig and you just want to fire them up a little bit, because sometimes grouper fishing, you don't get the bite right away, right? You got to work into it.
Right.
So you
got to weed your way through a bunch of other little stuff, or
when you're getting on a spot, right? You got to be on the uptide part of the spot. In other words, say this is our reef that we're looking at, right? Tide's running this way. You don't want to be anchored down there because all the fish are going to be up here. They're waiting for those shrimp and crabs and stuff to come off the sand onto the rocks.
So you want to be up current of the spot.
Up current of the spot, right? So if you start off with little bits and pieces of squid, you're up here, the current's running that way. It's like a natural chum slick, and instead of catching the few fish that are here or here, you're catching all the fish on the reef at that point.
Because they start coming up, and as you start catching fish, they're puking stuff. And
crabs and shrimp and whatever they've been eating all night. Yeah, it all comes out.
Right. So, again, when you're bottom fishing, any kind of bottom fishing, it's important to stay on the spot.
Very.
So how do you go about doing that? What's your go-to for that?
You know what, I anchor, but with the new Rodan trolling motors that are coming out, it's changed the game for a lot of different guys. It's made it so much simpler to get where they need to be on the spot. They don't have to fool with an anchor and chain and all that stuff.
And everybody can find that spot now with the GPS and everything, and,
yeah.
and then they can stay on it.
It's a
you don't
lot
have to learn
easier.
how to anchor and all that.
Yep.
Have you seen any kind of degradation of the species or anything? Are you still seeing plenty?
So I'm in the Southwest region, right, in the southern Gulf Coast, and our red grouper fishery is the strongest it's been in years. We have really seen a big push of fish this last year. Gags we haven't seen quite as much of, but our red grouper fishery is super strong.
How far out are you guys having to go out of Naples to get into the good water there?
In the summertime, you can catch those fish in as shallow as 35, 40 feet of water. In the wintertime, we usually fish around 100 feet of water. But as you go north, the species changes, right? You go up around Tampa, Sarasota, that area up there. Now you're talking about more gags than there are red groupers. And it's the opposite. Those guys will fish shallow in the wintertime.
Right. They come in, they come in.
Those fish like that.
February, March, they're all way up in 10, 15, 20 feet of water.
And then you go up to Steinhatchee, right? Those fish, they're in super shallow water, and you can get in and throw in some of these little lip plugs and stuff.
Beauty. Well, man, thank you very much for coming and doing this.
No,
it makes my job a lot easier.
Yeah, it does. You're good at asking questions, Dave. Just as good as you are at talking.
That's right.
I love it.